Bine ați venit în această zi de joi la o nouă ediție a podcastului nostru Prognotes. Dacă data trecută sau ultimele dăți ne-am uitat un pic la scena autohtonă și am vorbit un picuț despre zona aceasta de concerte, astăzi avem un invitat special din Marea Britanie, din Regatul Unit. O să vedeți în câteva minute despre ce este vorba. Însă, înainte de a avea această discuție cu invitatul nostru și a ne dezvălui un picuț detaliile noului său album solo, o să povestim un pic de această lună, iulie, care, iată, vine cu foarte, foarte multe release-uri. Mi se pare cel puțin că după câteva luni de liniște, acum ne lovesc brusc tot felul de release-uri noi. Nu știu, Cosmine, tu ce ai ascultat în ultimele săptămâni, cu ce promo-uri te mai delectezi și ce părere ai de această lună iulie deosebit de bogată?
Salut, salut! Pentru mine luna iulie a fost bogată în examene, în tot felul de proiecte care se închid și se deschid la serviciu. Așa că muzica a fost oarecum în plan secund. Deși urmăresc noile lansări de albume, am preferat mai degrabă să ascult radio în perioada asta. Și ca de obicei pendulez între cele trei genuri cu care știți că mă înconjur: clasic, jazz și prog.
Marius, tu ce ai făcut în ultimele săptămâni, în afară de activitate intensă pe grupuri, pe platane și la podcast? Cu ce te-ai mai delectat?
De activitatea extra prognotes nu zic nimica, că n-are rost. Legat de muzică, partea de tonomat mie îmi mănâncă, să zic, destul de mult timp, pentru că am foarte multe trupe între care variez. Încerc să găsesc o fluență în partea asta de episoade și să aibă cumva și o mică legătură așa una cu alta. Dar tot mai cad în capcana asta în care nu știu pe care să o aleg, că am prea multe chestii. Și așa, următoarele articole mi-am scris doar trupele pe care vreau să le aduc la tonomat, dar încă nu am o idee clară care, cum o să fie. Sper să mi-o cristalizez în perioada următoare. Și legat de noutățile absolute din acest iulie, nu pot să zic că sunt la curent așa cum ar trebui cu ele, pentru că mănânc vremea cu descoperiri din perioada 2003-2005 până prin 2010, așa, cu tot felul de albume care mi-au sărit la momentul ăla din grilă și pe care acum încerc să le recuperez. Plus tot felul de vechituri care nu încetează niciodată să dispară, în sensul că am un feed foarte bine pus la punct din punctul ăsta de vedere și nu știu când o să ajung la litera Z. Dar e bine, câtă vreme am material, îți mulțumim.
Cred că va trebui să dedicăm un podcast colecției tale, Marius.
Colecția mea este așa, pistol cu apă față de altele. Personal cred că sunt, cel puțin în Cluj, cel puțin vreo 3-4 oameni de la care eu învăț în mod constant chestii. Și nu mă refer doar pentru zona de prog. O surpriză uriașă a fost un disc Sara Webster Fabio, Jujus, versuri pe muzică. Foarte. Cred că am povestit și în celălalt podcast despre asta. Am ascultat foarte mult funk. A fost o perioadă mai funk așa pentru mine. Am băgat și Coltrane foarte mult. Nu pot să explic de ce, dar s-o nimerit să fie foarte des prezent pe aici. Și în rest în afara ariei de muzică, am băgat foarte multe povești. Că vă vine sau nu să credeți, sunt încă un copil mai mare care se bucură când aude poveștile puse pe platan. Am așa o nostalgie. Încă am vreo 2 discuri de povești pe care mi le caut cu înfrigurare și nu le găsesc. Sunt cele mai des ascultate discuri pe vremea când eram copil. Și de aia le caut așa. Dar putem face un podcast cu asta, nu mă opun. Cred că sunt așa câteva titluri. Putem găsi niște chestii de care să zicem că nu toată lumea este pusă la curent cu ele. Dar probabil că ar trebui să-l facem în mai multe episoade, că n-aș ști să scot din raft așa 4-5 nume și să spunem totuși ceva despre ele.
Păi acum că ai văzut cam cum face Portnoy episoadele lui, cred că ai un template cât de cât pentru colecția ta de viniluri și
da, recunosc
putem serializa.
Am fost foarte impresionat, nu știu de ce. Mă așteptam la mai mult din partea lui, ca să zic așa.
Deci spuneam de invitatul special de astăzi, dacă tot avem foarte multe apariții noi în luna iulie, printre ele și cele 3 CD-uri cover-to-cover ale triului Morse, Portnoy și George, dar pe lângă ele și evident Virus, noul album Haken și un nou album de la niște preferați ai lui Cosmin, și anume Lonely Robot, despre care o să povestim astăzi un pic mai mult cu John Mitchell, binecunoscutul chitarist care, printre multe alte formații, este și creatorul Lonely Robot, pe lângă prezența lui în Arena sau în It Bites sau în Frost, evident. Astăzi vom avea plăcerea să vorbim cu John și sperăm să ni se alăture podcastului în curând.
Welcome, John.
Hello.
Welcome, John.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for taking the time to join our podcast. We are Prognotes.
Okay.
I am Cosmin. With glasses, it's Razvan and Marius.
Hey.
Okay.
Hi.
Guys.
Nice to see you at last, because we've been looking forward to see you in any way, either on stage or in a conversation for quite a while.
Okay.
How are things in Berkshire?
Sorry?
How are things in Berkshire?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Very sunny.
Yeah.
It's it's very pleasant. I've been out all day, wandering around.
Yes.
So it's been good. Yeah, not too bad.
With or without a mask?
Well, I had a mask on earlier because we're all supposed to wear masks as of about a week's time. We all have to start wearing masks when we go into shops. So a friend of mine made me a really cool mask, which I wore out and about earlier, but it made my ears stick out like this. So I'm gonna get another one. Vanity prevails.
Yeah.
But it's a merchandise opportunity, right?
It is, absolutely is. It is. I'm going to get a Lonely Robot branded mask with, like, you know.
Yep.
You should do.
Oh, I will do. Don't you worry. And how are things with you guys?
We're pretty fine.
From Romania.
Well, we've been relaxing, so to speak, the rules COVID-wise, which unfortunately generated a rise on the number of cases registered. But yeah, otherwise we're pretty fine.
Okay.
We're trying to stay safe listening music, so
it's the best option indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
In a way, we are lonely robots now.
Yeah.
Oh, you see. I'd like to say that it was prophetic and I saw it all coming, but no.
All right. We thought of some questions, and without further ado, we will dive in.
Okay.
Yeah, since we discussed a bit about the pandemic and we are still under the limitation of it. I remember that back in May you had a wonderful part on the Prog From Home concert.
Oh yes.
Playing The Last Escape, the piece by It Bites. But the whole idea of the video made it so special. What appeared to be something improvised in the beginning, somehow put in a rush, was actually a very well crafted moment with a very powerful message, with the music of It Bites then transitioning into the red balloon and so on, and then the final message of your video. Can you tell us more about this segment of yours in the Prog From Home concert?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as you know, when this pandemic started, pretty much everybody grabbed their guitars and started sort of doing concerts from home. And it was, it's always somebody stood in their kitchen or something, isn't it? You know, somebody in their kitchen. And obviously the point of this is the fact that, you know, everybody is trapped at home. Well, certainly at the time in England, we were told not to go out, even though various members of the parliamentary cabinet in England were driving around the country like nothing had changed. We'll forget that for the moment.
Yep.
But yeah, I just, you know, I just knew that I think it was just important to do something. I just really, I wanted to, I just know that everybody else, I didn't know everybody else. It wasn't for any specific, I wasn't trying to be attention seeking or anything. I just knew that it was going to be very much, you know, music to me is escapism, and everything, all the musicians and all the artists and musical artists I love is all about escapism. And I just thought, well, you know, just because we're stuck at home doesn't mean you can't still sort of be a little bit creative. So I knew that a lot of people were going to be in their kitchen strumming guitars and stuff, you know, and I thought, well, I'll start by being in a room and then I'll pretend that I'm going somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, and the message at the end is just about the fact that I found, and it's a strange thing in a way, because I did find the first couple of weeks that I wasn't allowed out and I didn't see, I mean, I'm not used to not seeing people. I'm quite a sociable person in some ways. And I did find myself going a bit bonkers.
Like most of us.
Yeah. I spent the first 2 weeks lying in a hammock, reading books about musicians. And I don't normally lie in a hammock. And I certainly don't normally, I don't read as well. I read a lot of books, but normally at night time. And I just spent days on end lying in this hammock reading. It was like being on some holiday, except I didn't have anybody with me. And I just eventually, my friend said, look, you know, because I was going a bit stir crazy and I'm getting quite emotional. He said, well, why just let's join this Zoom chat, you know, and I didn't even know what Zoom was. So I joined a Zoom chat and it made me, because I did think, oh, I'm all on my own. Oh, and I kind of just joined this Zoom chat, and it kind of makes you realize no matter how bad things get in the world, you know, there's always somebody that you can talk to, and it's very easy to forget that, you know, and that was kind of the message of it all, really. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I just wanted to do something a bit different. I just you know, I like the visual medium a lot, and that's so no, you know, it wasn't it was deeply scripted and crafted, obviously. It was good fun to do.
Yes, the end result was wonderful.
Thank you.
Shortly after that, I think it was just a week, there came the announcement of a new Lonely Robot release, much to everyone's relief, because Thunderstar sort of spelled the end of the Space Trilogy as we became to know it.
Yeah, it was, I mean...
And we know that you previously expressed your wish to keep the Lonely Robot project alive, even though last year's release was a clear conclusion of it. How and when the new album seeds were planted?
Who's getting arrested?
No, it's ambulance, it's not police. So
it's ambulance. Oh,
yes.
No, even worse. Yeah. Well, I kind of, to tell you the truth, and the absolutely God's honest truth here is that you know, the title Lonely Robot, I mean, going way back in time to 2012, when I did the last album that I did with It Bites. Well, we only did 2 albums, but that was called Map of the Past, and I did that album, and I put a lot of time and effort and energy and love into that album. And when it got released, for no other reason than we had somebody involved with the band, a third party, a manager. And everything went really badly wrong at exactly the time that we released that album. And when you spent that long making an album, and I was really proud of that album, and it kind of went really, really wrong. Like we got into all sorts of legal wranglings, and I kind of thought, well, what's the point in doing music? It always ends up bad. I've had a few bad experiences being in bands, so I didn't make any music for a couple of years. And it was in about 2014, and then I had a meeting with Thomas Varber at Inside Out, the label, and he said,
"Pretty cool guy."
Yeah, he's a very cool guy. And he said to me, "Look, why don't you do something else? Do something on your own. Why don't you just do something on your own?" I thought, well, why not? Because I've always wanted to do something on my own, and I just found that the moment I started doing it, I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it. It's not that I don't enjoy being in bands and stuff, but it's just, it's nice working at your own speed and not having to, because obviously bands, you have to take other people's feelings into consideration, and it's a bit like, I think unfortunately for me, the music that I love the most, the bands that I love the most, it's always a bit of a benign dictatorship. So, for example, I really liked the album The Wall by Pink Floyd, but let's be honest, that wasn't really a band at that point. That was Roger Waters telling everybody what to do, which in my opinion is a good thing, because when Roger Waters tells people what to do, it sounds better to my ears, But, we can agree to disagree on that. I never really liked the 1980s Pink Floyd after Roger Waters left Pink Floyd. But the point I'm trying to make is it's very difficult with being in a band. Much as the plus side of being in a band is that you have camaraderie, and if people are horrible about your album, it's not just your fault. You can share the responsibility. Yeah. So when things go bad in a band, it's like, well, okay, we're all in this together. But of course, the downside of being in a band, sometimes it is a big compromise, and if you're as, excuse the phrase, bloody-minded as I am and stubborn, that's not a good thing. I'd like somebody's got to be in charge, and that was the good thing about when I started doing Lonely Robot. But to answer your question, I did 3 Lonely Robot albums purely because it was a 3-album contract, and I thought, well, I'll see how I feel about doing this for 3 albums, and then I can always do something else after 3 albums if I don't enjoy it. So I did 3 albums. I really enjoyed it. And then I sort of had a meeting with Thomas Varber. I said, well, I enjoyed that, but why don't, what if I want to make a reggae album? I didn't really say that. I said, but, the point I was trying to make was, look, people associate Lonely Robot with the astronaut and all that imagery and the whole kind of astronaut trilogy thing and the whole space thing.
Yeah.
I said, I want to do something a bit different now. It's kind of like, I said, I drew a ridiculous parallel. I said, you remember David Bowie when he did Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars? And he goes, well, that period of David Bowie's life only lasted a couple of years. So in my very sort of budget kind of way, I've gone through my sort of budget David Bowie phase, and I want to do something else now. And he said, being the marketing guy that he is and the businessman, he said, well, that's great, but we've established the name Lonely Robot. I said, well, yeah, but enough people know that, I'm called John Mitchell, and surely I could release music under my own name. He goes, yeah, but we have created, I'm very bad at doing my German impression, but he said, yeah, but we have created the brand Lonely Robot. Why kill the brand? And I said,
yeah.
He doesn't sound like that. That's, any minute now he's going to sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But no, I hope he doesn't listen to this because he'll take terrible offense. But no, I
we're going to edit it out. Don't worry.
Yeah, right. So yeah, and I just said, well, okay, I don't really mind how or what we call it, it doesn't matter to me as long as I keep making music. And as long as everybody understands that whole space thing is gone. And so I like the name Lonely Robot. I don't mind what we call it. I mean, we could call it Pizza for Two for all I care, as long as I get to make music, you know, and the music means something to people. That's all that really matters to me.
So you mentioned before that the life in a band can be sometimes pretty hard. And in today's world, it seems that everyone is looking for the perfect recipe for the perfect marriage, recipe for the perfect holiday, etc. And in the prog universe, it seems that there is also a pattern. When you're not happy with a certain project, you make a solo project. So is Lonely Robot the perfect recipe for the artist John Mitchell at this point?
I guess so. It's the best recipe that gets me a record contract and gets me to make music. I hadn't thought of it like that. I guess that's true, though, what you said there. Yeah, I suppose when people do get, you know, I suppose that you could be that, you know, it could be said that, you know, the guys in the band, yes, I suppose they reached a point, didn't they, in the late 70s. They said, well, this is really hard work being in the band. Yes, let's all make solo albums. And, you know, some of those were okay, and some of them were not so okay. And the bottom line is, I suppose they still came back to being in Yes and still arguing with each other. I mean, I think, to be honest with you, what made Yes good was the fact that, you know, perhaps there was that sort of negative chemistry. I mean, there was a lot of arguing, from what I understand, particularly between John Anderson and Chris Squire. But whether or not they argue, I don't care. You know, the results are beautiful. You know, the combination of that guy's bass. You could argue whether it's Bill Bruford or Alan White. I personally prefer Alan White. And you know, those guys, you know, they made some incredible music, despite they didn't necessarily like each other or get on a personal level. You know, you could, I mean, I would always choose to have people in a band, if, you know, or like, for example, the Lonely, I mean, I say it's not really a band, is it? Let's be honest, it's me and my megalomaniac phase writing the music. But obviously, you know, at some point you have to play live, and it's much more important, you know, on the understanding that I'm going to get some guys in the band who, you know, admittedly will be paid to play this music live. But it's far more, at this point in my life, it's far more important to me that I'm with people that I find funny and that I can get on with. You know, there's a lot of virtuoso musicians in the world, but you know, without much of a sense of humor. So as long as they can make me laugh, and likewise, I mean, that's far more. I think the camaraderie of being in a band at this age. Let's be honest with you, you know, progressive rock is never going to be, well, touch wood, who knows? You know, it's never going to be perhaps as popular as, I don't know, Kanye West or whatever, but so you might as well have a good time making this music and being in a band with these people. But like I said at the time about the It Bites thing, it was never about the people in the band. You know, I've always loved being in a band with John Beck and you know, Bob Dalton and I won't lie to you, you know, we have very different ideas and opinions about things, but I've always got on really well with him, you know, and he's got a very good sense of humor. It wasn't with It Bites, it wasn't about the guys in the band, it was about a third party. You know, this guy who kind of was a bit of a bad influence at the time and kind of really kind of diminished my enthusiasm for being in a band at that time. So, you know, we kind of did actually start writing some more music after that album, but my heart wasn't really in it. And then John Beck went off and played keyboards for Fish for a couple of years. I should say he didn't actually play keyboards for marine creatures, but the artist known as Fish.
So, speaking of patterns and trends,
yeah,
it seems that artificial intelligence and the way as we as a species are having a strange attraction to it became a common theme among the artists. Also, is the album Feelings Are Good a reaction to it, to underline what we really are and what we really should care for, or it's just a very simple reflection of what you are right now?
Well, I called it. A lot of people, you know, I've done a few interviews for this, and everyone says to me, "Yeah, feelings are good." It's a really positive name for an album. I'm thinking, these guys don't know my sense of humor. I'm really sarcastic, and the kind of the idea is, you know, it's quite a bleak cover, and feelings are good. It's supposed to be a bit like an ironic statement. The meaning behind it is the fact that English people, well, I suppose if one can identify as being English, I mean, English is a very strange, a strange state of existence to be English, because it means a lot of things. But famously within the bowels of Europe, England is considered a very repressed sort of, English people aren't very, like we say about Germans, are very outspoken and blunt, right? And English people are the opposite. They're very reserved, and they don't say anything that they really think. They're just too busy being polite, Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether that's the general. I mean, I don't know what the general opinion of English people is. I probably shouldn't know, but certainly, I know that a lot of the people that I know of my generation are very repressed. So that the whole title and idea behind this album was just to get a lot of stuff off my chest, which I probably have never discussed with anybody. And because, certain members of my family are probably going to listen to this album and go, "Oh God, what's he gone and said that for?" Because it's not, certainly some of the songs on this album, it's not steeped in mystical metaphors. It's a lot of it is very cut and dry. But no, it's nothing. So it's nothing to do with AI or anything. It literally is about the fact that if you're English, feelings are good if you know how to express them, and which is kind of why I use this album as a way of expressing them, which is why it's called Feelings Are Good.
But do you see, now that we're talking about this, do you see sort of an evolution to this? Because we also have this perception or this cliche of the repressed Englishman. But do you see this shifting nowadays? I mean, obviously, there's a worldwide transition towards a very outspoken leaders who are unfortunately right now messing things up in a lot of countries. But I'm just curious if you perceive maybe a difference in between generations and newer generations being more outspoken.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because I was thinking earlier today about, like you just said, the leaders, well, you say leaders, leaders being outspoken. I don't even know it's being outspoken, just being wildly narcissistic and saying whatever comes into their head, thinking it's the best thing that ever came into anyone's head. Yeah, it is a disease. I mean, it's not even funny. This word that gets bandied around so liberally in this day and age, and everybody in it, it's funny. Let's be honest. Narcissism. The clamoring for attention, etc., etc., etc. Well, yeah, you could argue that every musician in the world has varying degrees. I mean, it's a scale, isn't it? Just as much as you could, describe anybody that, who likes all their pencils to be a certain length, you could describe them as being mildly autistic. And then there's varying degrees of that. Certainly, I'm obsessively compulsive to the point where, probably, myself, I collect things. I'm a bit of a hoarder. I'm a bit of, well, you can see that. Behind me, maybe, I don't know. I do think that this condition, I think it's a dangerous, if you were going to put somebody in charge of a hospital wing, right, and they had the same mental condition that Donald Trump has, surely there should be some vetting process. Well, this guy is probably not fit to undergo open heart surgery, because he obviously has some sort of a god complex and he thinks that he can't kill anybody. But yet you put the leader of the free world. Is that, I mean, it's quite interesting. I challenge everybody in this chat to go onto YouTube after this and type in Donald Trump 1980s interview, right? And you watch an interview with Donald Trump from the 1980s, and it's a disturbing thing. He's actually quite lucid and quiet and considered in his responses. And you can almost see like a timeline as interviews get through into the 90s, and he starts arguing back at people. and then he just won't hear people. He shuts people down, and here we are, and it's 2020, and he's just like got this messianic complex. It's terrifying. I don't care how many people voted him in. He is, he's a time bomb. Just because 20 million people tell you to jump off a cliff doesn't mean you should jump off a cliff.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that.
So feelings are good as long as they are mindful of other people's feelings, I guess.
Feelings.
Which would be a longer title.
That's
of the
a long
album,
title. That's a long. Small font. You wouldn't be able to read it.
It's a hard one. It's a hard one to explain.
I'll tell you what. I'll have that for the next edition.
Maybe the limited edition can come with that.
Brackets disclaimer.
With a collectible Boris figurine.
Yeah, collectible Boris figurine and easy to use razor blade with everything. Oh gosh, what am I saying? Sorry.
All right. So don't worry, we'll edit it out or not.
Or not. Yeah, right.
So moving a little bit past our crazy powers that be to the general state of this pandemic that we're all facing, and I think that everybody's struggling a bit. We have a bunch of these questions that we keep asking because we're wondering ourselves how everybody will get out of this. But how do you see the artists, and how do you see especially the artists in our area where it's not really about the millions of units that are being pushed, coming out of this and surviving this extraordinary state that we're in. Thinking also about the fact that, for instance, the British government recently announced this lifeline for the arts of more than 1 billion. Do you think this will pan out? Do you see this panning out for people? How do you think this will happen?
I think that that's very much, that funding of which you speak is very much aimed at theatres and live venues. And if you're talking about individual musicians, and there have been several grants and funds available to musicians little pockets of money put aside. For example, the Performing Rights Society had a little fund put aside for this very sort of an occurrence. And so I think I put in a claim to that. I think I got £500 at the start of this, and I might have got £600 from somebody else. But beyond that, you in this country, the sort of money that you're talking about isn't really enough to live on, for months on end. When people have bills, and unfortunately, this is the time that we find ourselves in that, unfortunately, Boris Johnson is not fit to govern the country of England, the United Kingdom. He just isn't. He's a career politician. He has no understanding of politics. He's merely a stupid scarecrow of a puppet that no one respects, and he's wildly mismanaged this whole thing. And from the fact of the matter is, now in a couple of weeks, only now, we have to suddenly start wearing face masks. Shouldn't that have been 4 months ago? Shouldn't it? Anyway, I'm getting off the topic. You're asking. A lot of people I know who are musicians. They're absolutely fucked. I don't really, my friend Nathan King, he started painting people's houses and stuff. Well, I suppose that's what you have to do in a dire situation. But a lot of businesses I know have gone under. It's just, no one can allow for something like this to happen. But it's the top tier economy, isn't it? The 1%, and there's no way that it's just the state. That's the state of the world. Unfortunately, much as people I heard somewhere that in a survey, people said that they consider music and sex to be the most important things, secondary to air and water in their lives. Well, you wouldn't really know it, would you? In the way that funds have been appropriated towards, musicians. I think, well, and obviously, I don't want to be a whiny musician, because ultimately, I think it was Alan Rickman that once said, you know, music and the arts, it's like relief for people that do jobs that actually matter, which is kind of true in a way. You know, it's not like, I mean, would we all die if everybody banned music? No one was going to die. I mean, it'd be a bit of a dull world, and music can help people through difficult times, and it's uplifting. But, you know, in some ways, I've always argued that musicians' egos directly in proportional to the actual value of what they bring to the world. I mean, like when you consider somebody, I mean, I can't think of who's an extremely egotistical musician. Anybody got any suggestions?
Roger Waters again.
Well, yeah, but I like Roger Waters. All right.
Well, I like him too, but he's egotistical. Come on.
I don't know. Somebody who likes the sound of their own voice. I don't know. David Coverdale, right? I mean, he is a light entertainer, isn't he? You know. And the way, you know, sometimes you think he discovered a cure for cancer, but he's actually just a light entertainer. And that's not to say that I don't enjoy David Coverdale and his sort of strange pantomimery. But I don't know. It's not essential, is it, that we have David Coverdale making music in this world any more than it's essential than we have me making music in this world. But at the same time, it would be nice to think that we were valued to a degree where the living leader Scarecrow had appropriated some funds for musicians at some point along the line, which he clearly hasn't. So a lot of people I know are finding themselves in a very dark place, going down a rabbit hole of no return. I mean, I haven't had I had to cancel all my studio bookings, and that's what I rely on. Of course, musicians can't afford to go and record with me because the same things happen to them. So who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of playing music live, I recall there were plans to have a few days for a special Lonely Robot evening, playing the whole trilogy back to back. Yeah. Are those still on schedule? Last time we checked, it was for December this year or something.
It is for the December. Yeah, I mean, we had it organized before. Well, I say it was a bit of a mission originally. In January, I wanted to do January of last year, so a year and 7 months ago. I wanted to plan some dates for December 2019 to do all 3 albums, because I knew that that would be the end of the trilogy, so we'd play all 3 albums back to back. Unfortunately, it took some time. The person who I put in charge of organising the dates. Took a bit longer than I'd planned or hoped for him to organise the dates. So in actual fact, by the time we came to announce the dates, I think it was nowhere near. I think we eventually announced some live dates, and we announced them on November the 18th for February of this year, which, let's face it, wouldn't really have made much sense because I had a new album coming out. So I kind of like, well, that's a bit pointless now. So I said, can we reschedule these dates? Now, I always like playing gigs in December because it gives me a warm, Christmassy, fuzzy feeling. So I said, well, can we organise the dates so that they're in December of this year? Now, that was a stupid idea, wasn't it? Because ultimately, whether or not they go ahead is a matter of much consternation. I don't actually know whether they're going to go ahead. It's looking quite unlikely. Supposed to be on tour with Arena in October. That's been put back in October next year. I'll be surprised if December does go ahead, but we've already printed the little sticker that goes on the front of the album that announces the tour dates. So it's too late to get rid of the sticker. So we'll just have to see what happens.
Well, whatever happens, just don't drop the idea.
I won't drop the idea. No, I'd like to do. I mean, certainly it's annoying that we've got a 4th album now, because that might mean we have to play some of those songs as well. But it's. The original plan was to do all 3 albums back to back. And I don't even know if that was a very clever idea, because that's got to be about 3 hours of music. And most prog fans can't stand up for more than about an hour. So that's a joke, by the way.
Yeah. It's clearly visible that you're a funny guy and you like people with a lot of humor. You mentioned in a recent interview that you don't take yourself seriously all the time. So it looks like the fun is one of the ingredients that keeps a project going. How do you think today's artistic world is suitable for this kind of approach?
I should reiterate, I do take the process of making music very seriously. I think that, but let's be honest, progressive rock is quite a serious genre of music. I mean, I played many prog festivals in my time. And some of those prog festivals, I've seen some of the most serious things I've ever seen in my adult life. I saw a man at one prog festival sat cross-legged wearing white robes at the front of a stage with a sitar. And I thought that was quite serious. And I decided from that moment forth, the best overly serious things, it's not serious things at all. So I think, prog music, don't get me, I love a lot of sort of over the top things. The things that resonate with me most about progressive rock are things like Rick Wakeman and his cape. I mean, I don't think Rick Wakeman takes his cape that seriously. He probably puts on his cape and thinks, I'm Rick Wakeman, here comes the cape again. I don't think he puts it on and thinks, I hope everybody takes me massively seriously with this glittery cape on. But it's Rick Wakeman, and it makes me smile when I see Rick Wakeman with a cape. I don't think Peter Gabriel, when he had that massive giant hemorrhoid hat that he wore with Genesis, I don't think he expected anybody to take him entirely seriously wearing that hat. But of course, because it's progressive rock, people go, oh, it's the Slipper Man, and all this business. I don't know, is that the Slipper Man? No, that's the Slipper, and of course these things, English people are silly, and Peter Gabriel, more than anybody, and I know because I've met him a few times, has an incredible sense of humor. And I'm very fortunate that everybody that I've ever worked with has always had a sort of, I'm talking about, I've only ever played in English bands, but everybody I've ever met in English bands has had an incredible sense of humor and a sort of an ability to sort of be self-deprecating, I mean, at the end of the day, like I say, it is light entertainment. I mean, like Jem Godfrey in the band Frost, who I get on like with a house on fire. We both got exactly the same sense of humor. And, the whole thing about Frost is he just, whilst, there are serious moments in Frost's music. And when we play it live, it's absolutely terrifying to play because it is quite complicated. So that, but in between the songs, it's an unspoken thing, I think, in slightly being English and sort of having this very self-deprecating nature about yourself, that you do try and find the sort of ironic things in life around you. It's just part of our sort of culture, So long live Rick Wakeman and his cape, and the giant hemorrhoid hat that Peter Gabriel wore. And I love all of these things, in equal measure, and I love. In some ways, they're absurd, and in some ways, they're to be revered. And down to the fact that I remember we did a live album with Frost, and in between the songs, he turned up the audience, and the audience was all clapping, but he also had a stereo track of dogs barking. So he kind of faded the dogs and the audience together. No one ever knows, and they can never hear it, but I can hear it every time. If I ever learn like the live version of a track, and I get to the end of it, and I hear all this, yeah, I can also, woo, 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 woo. And it just makes me laugh, the fact that he did that,
Hail to that.
So speaking of loving things in equal measure, you went with the first Lonely Robot albums with a bunch of guests, and some of them, of course, quite well known, like Ella Findlay or H or Kim Savior. Now you just scale things down a little bit to get more personal. I mean, you work with Craig, obviously, but that's about it for the new album. I mean, is this something you see gravitating more towards, going more personal, going more scaled down, or do you see this mix happening also in the future?
To be fair, that first, I hate it. That first album, it was, when I had that meeting with Thomas Warber, in the wide world of prog, you do see very much, there's a lot of collaborations, aren't there? People love a good collaboration. They love people to collaborate, and it's always nice when you see, Mike Portnoy loves a collaboration. He's always playing with lots of different people. And I I understand that it's, you know, from a marketing, I hate to use this word because I'm a musician, I'm not a business guy. I don't care two hoots about business or marketing, but it was suggested to me that on that first Lonely Robot album, seeing as we were creating something new, why not get some special guests involved just to sort of raise awareness of it, you know? And I immediately thought, oh no, not that. Oh God, special guests. Oh, I'm going to get people on this album that are just there to sell the record. And then I thought, well, they don't have to do that. I could get some people that I really respect and admire and love and generally look up to, and get them to do stuff that I really, really want them to do. And I thought, the first thing I thought was, Nick Kershaw's a brilliant guitar player, but no one really knows Nick Kershaw's a brilliant guitar player. So what I'm going to do is get Nick Kershaw to play a brilliant guitar solo on a song. And he did. And that's kind of cool because not many people know how Nick, well, not that, you know, I mean, you know, Nick Kershaw doesn't need me to tell the world that he's a brilliant guitar. He's Nick fucking Kershaw. But at the same time, you know, people were like, well, who's that playing guitar? It's Nick Kershaw. So, you know, if 15,000 people now know that, you know, Nick Kershaw, he's just a brilliant guitar player. Peter Cox from Go West. I mean, I love Go West. And Peter Cox is a massive prog fan. Nobody knows that. And he's a good friend of mine. And so just getting him on board, and he's got such an amazing voice. And just to get him on for those two verses of whatever the song is that I can't remember, Boy in the Radio. And just to get him to do that was incredible. And I'll tell you a funny story. Not a lot of people know this, but when I got Steve Hogarth, I've known Steve Hogarth for years and years and years. We've known each other since the dawn of time. And I've always been good friends with him, and we always have a right laugh whenever we see each other. You know, he's good fun, great fun bloke, really lovely, very quiet but funny guy. And I just thought, well, I'll ask him if he wants to play some piano, because I know he's actually a brilliant pianist. He's really good on the piano, but of course he's most famous for being this amazing singer. And of course, the thing about Steve is he doesn't like really too often, he doesn't like singing on other people's album, because he's big on this whole thing about integrity. And I'm sure, I think he said he'd been asked about 1,000,001 times to contribute vocals to people's albums. And he just says, no, I don't want to do that, you know. He only sings or plays on things that he really, 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 really likes or really believes in, or that are aligned with his vision of what music should sound like. So I didn't ask him to sing on it because I knew that he'd probably say no anyway. So I thought, well, I'll ask him if he wants to play piano on a couple of songs, and because he's a better pianist than me. So he came along and he played piano on two songs, Why Do We Stay and Humans Being. And I thought, great, that's brilliant. And he did a way better job than I did of playing piano on those two songs. But then he kept saying, well, do you know what? I've got this really good harmony that would work really well on this song. I said, okay. And he goes, well, let me sing it. Get a microphone now. Let me sing this harmony. So on both of these songs, he just wanted to sing. I thought the last thing he's ever going to want to do is sing. And then he just decided he wanted to. So he sung on them. And then when the album got released, everybody was like, who is this arrogant arse John Mitchell who thinks he can get Steve Hogarth to sing backing vocals? The god that is Steve Hogarth to sing backing vocals on his album. And I was like, no, he wanted to do it. I couldn't say no.
Awesome insight.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, in answer to your question, that was a very long answer, wasn't it? I felt like that was something. It was great fun to get all these people on board. I wouldn't say no to having future guests on the album. For example, on the last album, we had Steve Vancis playing bass on 5 of the songs. Steve actually plays live with me, and I also, I played guitar for Fish. Again,
another Fish connection. Yeah,
I wasn't playing guitar for Marine Life. Again, I just want to make that quite clear. The artist Fish, the musical artist Fish.
You should put a disclaimer, a banner.
Yeah, no, I wasn't actually in the middle of the sea trying to cheer the fish up with my guitar. I was playing guitar for the artist Derek Dick, otherwise known as Fish. And I've known Steve, who's basically he's been Fish's right-hand man for about 23 years now. And Steve also plays bass in Lonely Robot, and I play guitar on the new Fish album, and I co-wrote a song with Fish on the new Fish album, which is due out in exactly 5 days, called Garden of Remembrance. It's his next single that he's releasing.
We just waited.
Okay, well, that's going to be out soon. So I co-wrote that with Fish. And yeah, Steve, obviously, he plays bass in the live band. So on the last album, he kept bringing me up going, let me play bass on the album. Let me play bass on the album. You can't play everything. And I said, oh, all right then. You play bass on the album. So he played bass on some of the album because he had a gun to my head at the time. And no, he didn't really. It was great that he got to play on the album. It's just that I get in my little wind tunnel of I'm going to do everything. I'm going to do everything. So now you mention it, yeah, next album I might well get some other friendly faces on board. As long as that they, as long as that they are on the same musical page as me, and I'm not getting them on the album for celebrity value or just for. There's got to be for artistic reasons, not commercial reasons. That's and that was the whole. That's why to this day I'm still very proud of the fact that on that first Lonely Robot album we had Jem Godfrey, we had Kim, we had Heather, who had sung that song beautifully with me, and Peter Cox and Kershaw. It was a real thrill to have. Oh, and Nick Beggs. It was a real thrill to have all those guys on that record. And going forward, I think there might be a case for doing that again.
Lovely. As lovely as your humor and your witty and biting and at times sarcastic, but with a good balance tweets, which I follow. On a more sober note, you ran a blog for quite a few years, which is still online, I think, The Life and Times of Lord Connaught.
Yeah.
And there are some rather illuminating and heartwarming or heart-wrenching stories in there. Do they have echoes in this new album?
Quite possibly. To be honest with you, to be totally honest with you, until you mentioned it just then, I'd forgotten all about that blog. I absolutely, I'm in fact, I wouldn't even know where to find it. So I don't.
Maybe I could help you find it. I'll send you the link afterwards.
Send me the link. Send me that. I do seem to recall. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're referring to that. I mean, certainly. I remember at one point I gave up. I gave up drinking some time ago now, and that was, quite. Not saying that was challenging. But there are times when when the start of lockdown happened, I remember thinking, oh God, I'm bored. What I wouldn't do for a gin and tonic. And you think, no, that's only going to lead one way. You're going to have 2 days drinking, and then it's going to be 3 days drinking, and then before you know it, it's going to be drinking all the time. I have a very addictive personality. I buy far too many things, right? So when I go shopping, when I go to a store, I spend too much money. I have an obsession.
I do the same here. Look.
Yeah, you see, you're addicted to buying books. So am I. And not just books. I collect everything. I collect watches. I collect clocks. I'm obsessed with watches, clocks, and globes, and books. And obviously that's negative in the respect that that is a drain on financial resources. But it doesn't affect interpersonal relationships. But certainly one of the things about that blog I remember was that I reached a point where I was drinking far too much. And of course, going on tour, all musicians I know go on tour, and at some point or other, they find themselves waking up at 3 p.m. with a hangover. And you've got to think, right, we've got to stop this, man. This is stupid. And it's not just, it's not just me. I wouldn't ever describe myself as an alcoholic, but I would describe myself as an obsessive human being. And everything I do to an extremely obsessive, to an excessive level. So, for example, when I make an album, I will get up at 7 and I won't leave the studio until 12 o'clock. I just, I'm like this. Make an album quickly. And the same can be said for every other aspect of my life. So it's a good thing in some ways. It's a bad thing, but you can, certainly that blog, I seem to recall writing something about my bad relationship with alcohol, and that to this day that has been resonant. Yeah, a lot of the things. I mean, certainly, a lot of my interpersonal relationships over the years, some have been featured on this album, and you know, there are going to be some people that listen to that album that know me and think, oh God, really, Mitchell? Did you have to go and write about that? You know, the song "Keeping People as Pets" is quite personal to a couple of people I know. So yeah, it's feelings are good.
Would add
let's linger a bit. Sorry, Marius. Let's linger a bit on the blog topic, because there is this rather enigmatic piece, the Airlock chapter, which opens the trilogy, and then it ends it in a surprising and a puzzling reading of the beginning of some hypothetical journal or book. Can you elaborate on that, please? Because I got to read about it in the blog, and it seems that it was existing before the first album.
Yeah.
What is this?
Well, the chapter Airlock. Well, I wanted to write a book that it's one of these things that I've wanted to do, and I kind of realized that perhaps it wouldn't be that interesting to people. It was just a chapter. I wanted the Lonely Robot thing to be a book, as well as I wanted it to be like I wanted to do the whole trilogy. I wanted to write an accompanying book for it, but of course, you know, that has limited appeal to people. So I wrote the chapter before I even made the first album. And I remember actually I wrote the lyrics for the song Lonely Robot before I wrote a note of music. And I remember I was thinking about this the other day. Why on earth is this thing called Lonely Robot? Why did I start doing it? What purpose does it serve? What function does it serve? And the answer is, I don't know. But I do remember I wrote that chapter before I started doing the first album. I do remember that I had the lyrics for the song Lonely Robot. You know, that's the long one on the first album, which I think is probably one of my favorite pieces of music that I've done. Why didn't it go beyond that first chapter? I don't know. But I kind of wanted to write a book to go alongside all three albums. But then like I just said, you know, not all ideas come to fruition. I don't know why I wrote that. In fact, now you've just told me that it's on this blog. I don't remember anything about that blog. You know, it's I'll be fascinated to, if you can send me the link to that blog. I'd be because I'd forgotten it even exists.
Sure. And who is Lord Connaught? Is he an alter ego of yours?
Well, as you know what, I was thinking about this the other day.
Is the address of the studio? Huh?
It's not difficult to find where my studio is. I mean, you just have to type it into Google Maps and you can find where my studio is. But you might notice it's on Connaught Road.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
Yeah, exactly. And
so it's nothing more than that.
Oh no, that's coming. I'm going to tell you why. Back when I was drinking a lot, I went on eBay one night and stupidly I bought a Rolls-Royce, and it was a Rolls-Royce that used to belong to Keith Moon.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a royalty check. I produced an album for the band Humour at 6, and I got because I had production points on it, and I got very excited when I was on eBay with far too many gin and tonics at the time, and I thought, look, there's Keith Moon's Rolls-Royce. I must have that. So I bought Keith Moon's he had 7, by the way. It's not exclusive. I mean, the man couldn't even drive a car, like, let alone a Rolls-Royce, let alone 7. He only had 2 feet. So even if he could have driven a car, he couldn't have driven 7 Rolls-Royces concurrently. So I bought this Rolls-Royce, and there it sat on my driveway. And then the DJ, in England, we had in the 80s, we'd had a lot of sort of superstar celebrity disc jockeys on Radio 1. And one of them was a guy called Mike Reed. And he's quite famous if you're English. He was he used to be in charge of a TV show called Pop Quiz. And they used to be like teams of bands pitted against each other, like Duran Duran and Spandau Ballet. They used to have to answer questions on Pop Quiz. And Mike Reed was the host, and he was kind of a big deal when I was a kid. Anyway, for some reason or other, I ended up producing an album. Mike Reed is like a frustrated musician. And I remember that I started producing an album for Mike Reed at one point. And I remember the first time he turned up at my studio, and he turned up and he saw this Rolls-Royce. And he said, look, it's you with the Rolls-Royce. You must be Lord Connaught. So
Nice story.
I thought that was incredibly funny, so it stuck, and then that became my Twitter handle on Twitter. It became Lord Connaught, and then for some bizarre reason, within about a year of having this handle, Lord Connaught, actual peers of the realm, actual lords, people that go into the House of Lords, suddenly added me to their Twitter group. They kind of included me. Lords, what do we think about the latest, and started talking about things that were going on inside the House of Lords. And they copied me in thinking that I was an actual lord. So I got all these tweets about these important social topics that I knew nothing about. And then I started reading books on all sorts of important things that I thought I ought to learn about so that I could join in these lordy conversations with these actual lords. So yeah, I'm not actually a lord. Certainly there is no Lord Connaught, but that's all thanks to Mike Reed, host of 80s Pop Quiz, and I've had a lot of fun being involved in very important social topics, Lords of the Realm. So there you go.
That's cool. That's a very cool story.
It's very silly, but funny, I say.
And you can even cross the other bridge now to the House of Lords. So I'm pretty sure that.
Well, I think
that's an additional perk.
I just go there with my phone open and my Twitter conversation. Look, everybody, I'm with these guys.
Exactly. Yeah. So you mentioned obsessions and being obsessive about things, which we obviously can totally relate to. We have also some obsessions ourselves that we keep asking in these podcasts, and apart from, of course, the perk of just talking to people who we are big fans of and whose music we appreciate. One of the things that we keep asking is where does it all start in the creative process? So for you mentioned a lot of times that you start with the lyrics, and one of the things that we notice, at least, or we keep talking about in all our conversations, are the fact that the attention spans get shorter nowadays with so much new things coming up and so much information. So starting with the lyrics is, I think, an interesting approach. How do you do that, or what's your approach? Can you elaborate a little bit on your creative process and how you go about it?
Absolutely. I only got one rule with writing music, and this applies to anybody that I write music with. And it's kind of a rule that's kind of I kind of unwittingly forced on everybody I write music with, and that is quite simply, when I write an album, I have a little book, and I'm wondering. In fact, I might even hang on a minute. Hold on. Hang on. I might. When I say a book, I also have a list on my phone. If I can find it here, hold on. Any second now. Oh, that's not the right. Hang on. Hold on. It's coming. Hold on. Here it comes.
Wait for it.
Okay, yeah. So, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that at all?
No.
What about now?
Right now.
There it is.
There it is. So I don't know why I can't even see. I haven't got my reading glasses. I don't know what any of that says, but it does say list of songs. So every time I start an album, I start with a list like that, right? And every day that I get up, I look at the list and right. The list is basically titles of songs that I invent, which sound interesting to me. And obviously, being English, I'm quite fascinated by. English is a very strange language in that it's not. It's a very it's a very, very descriptive language. It's not as beautiful as French or Italian. But it's a very descriptive language, and there's a lot of words in English that mean more than one thing. I think several words in English mean about 7 things. So I'm very fascinated by the way that words work together, and certainly titles, like Army of One. It's a very simple title, but when you think about it, it's quite a striking title, I thought, anyway. So as long as I have a title in place, at the start of the day, when I start writing music, then the first thing I do is the title is almost like a little coat hook. Once you have a title, the song kind of writes itself. It's really hard to explain, but it's like you wouldn't start writing a book unless you knew what the book was going to be about, or you had a title of a book. I don't think, most people that write a book know that, the book is going to be called such and such. And once you have in mind with a song, I mean, obviously a song is only, 5, or in the world of prog, 10 minutes long or whatever. I have always written to a title. And if I don't have a title, I won't even bother trying to write a song. I just find that the whole process of writing music and lyrics is so much easier if you do have a title. And I'll tell you something, I'll give you an example of this. There's a It Bites album. The first It Bites album that we ever did was called The Tall Ships. And I didn't have a clue what we were going to do or what we were going to write songs about. I just didn't know. I was just sitting around opposite John Beck, who was there with his keyboard, going, right, what are we going to do today? And I was like, well, you play something. Because this is the thing about making music. You are okay. I'll play this. You play. What is it going to be? A happy song? Is it going to be a sad song? And you waste so much time doing that. Whereas if I say to you, right, we're going to write a song called "Keeping People as Pets," but automatically in my mind that said, right, keeping people as pets. That sounds quite dark. That sounds, in my mind, that sounds quite urban. That sounds quite like it's inner city. For some reason, that sounds quite inner city. So automatically, the mood of the song is dictated. And then all of a sudden, all these little, what's the chorus lyric going to be? Keeping people as pets in veiled etiquette, and it kind of writes itself. But when I first did that It Bites album, The Tall Ships, I didn't know what the hell we were going to write about. So I used to do this. I used to, like you are now, where I'm facing you now. I just used to go like this. I used to go, oh, okay, cool. There's a bookshelf there. And behind that chair, there are 5 books in a row, right? The first one is called The Tall Ships. The second one is called Great Disasters. The third one is called The Wind That Shakes the Barley. The fourth one is called This Is England. And every day I thought, right, look at that book there. That's a cool title. So I'd pick a title off the spine of a book and I'd write a song about it, which is really, it's just kind of cheating in a way. But it made the point to me that if you know what the title of a song is, just the word, the conjuring of the words in your head the moment you have a title is about 90% easier than if you don't have any kind of idea what you're going to write about. The title itself is like a big anchor point for what the song is going to do. And that is my creative process. I get up 7 in the morning, I come down here, I look at my little list or my book and I go, right, today we are going to create, and we will not, the royal we, I will not stop making music until such a time that the song Keeping People as Pets is complete. And of course, that process might go on for 2 days until it's complete. But, up to a point at which I can get Craig in to do drums on it, that is the process, And that's the only way that I know how to write music to a title.
So far, this interview was more like a confession you made to us. And we really appreciate your opening and everything. But also you are a study object. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you are a space nerd, among others. So today being 16th of July, when Apollo 11 is heading to launch pad for a historic flight, thoughts on this from Lonely Robot and from John Mitchell?
Well, you're talking about that. I'm more. I don't know about you guys, but I'm more concerned and thinking about the solar orbiter.
Yeah.
Are you aware of
that? New comet that is available until 23rd, I guess.
Yes, that's correct. All of which is
Twice.
Thursday evening is every Thursday evening I have what we lovingly call Prog Chat. It starts at 8 o'clock UK time, and basically on the board of Prog Chat are Alexander Milas, who used to be editor of Metal Hammer in the United Kingdom, Mark McCaughrean, who is director of space operations at the European Space Agency, Dr. Stuart Clark, who also used to work at the European Space Agency, Jerry Ewing, who is involved in, the boss of Prog magazine.
Prog magazine.
We just sit there and we talk about space stuff. and really important things in the cosmos. And we talk about prog rock. It's called Prog Chat, but actually we talk about everything and anything.
We want in.
You want in?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll see if I can get you in. Send me your emails. 8 o'clock tonight.
All right.
We give you the blog address. You gave us the entry ticket.
Okay, all right, you got it. All right. I'll pay the ransom.
Yeah.
All right, let's stick for a while with the space theme.
Okay.
And speaking of movies,
Yeah.
we are all, I mean, I for sure am a big fan of sunshine.
Yes.
And How Bright is the Sun is a clear nod at that movie.
Absolutely.
Then there is the opening track of Under Stars, which has this Blade Runner vibe of it. To sum it up, can you share some of your favorite movies?
Yeah, absolutely.
Starting from
the whole Lonely Robot trilogy, I really wanted to reference, or sort of, I mean, you know, I suppose you could call it gentle plagiarism in a way, but I kind of tried to stay on the right side of the tracks at certain points. Certain points I wanted to reference things. They say that you know, mimicry or copying is the sincerest form of flattery. For example, the first track on the Lonely Robot album ever, which is called Airlock, was a reference to the film Moon. Clint Mansell did the soundtrack. Clint Mansell was in a band called Pop Will Eat Itself, who were nothing to do with anything to do with. They were kind of a sort of grebo-y, grungy band from the late 80s. And he's now gone on to do film soundtracks. And he's a very talented composer, and it's a very simplistic soundtrack. It's, you know, it's kind of what I call an anti-films. Normally when you hear a film soundtrack, it's quite sort of like modern faux classical music. It's quite, you know, it's quite Disney-esque, you know, it's quite, you know, it's all Lydian mode, and it's all kind of really, and he did this really sort of claustrophobic piece of music, and I loved it. So I'd say that going back to that, Moon is probably one of my favorite films. I mean, it was done on a budget. It's made by Duncan Jones, who is David Bowie's son. Absolutely brilliant. Mm-hmm. Contact,
yeah,
favorite film. I think somebody asked me the other day, what film have I seen more than any other film ever? Contact is probably it. Blade Runner, obviously. I don't know anybody that doesn't like Blade Runner. And if I do know anybody that doesn't like Blade Runner, I don't want to know them anymore.
Yeah, the same.
Anybody here? Not anybody. Right, I'm clicking the mute button. Who doesn't like Blade Runner? No. I love Blade Runner. It's, I mean, you know, I think a lot of questions about humanity are raised in Blade Runner. And even though this was made in 1980, it's still.
I'm not too fond of the second one, but that's another story.
Like the second one, you know, you're a prog fan. You're supposed to prefer the original, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm actually worried about the Dune remake, but anyway, that's another story.
You should be worried about the Dune remake. Every time anybody's trying to make anything to do with Dune, it's not gone brilliantly, has it? I mean, David Lynch clearly ran out of money, and then you had the TV series, which was kind of okay, and now we've got this thing coming, so who knows? But certainly Blade Runner 2049, I don't think there was any point in having Harrison Ford in that, apart from PR value. I didn't think he led to the film. It would have been a better film without him, if I'm being totally honest with you.
Yep.
Sunshine, as you mentioned, I love that film. I also love, I hate to say it, The Martian. I love that film. I think it's brilliant.
Why you hate to say it? Because I also like it.
Well, I know, because it's
not only us, I'm sure.
It's not
because it's too commercial, or why?
Yeah, if you're a sci-fi fan, it's like saying it's like the McDonald's of sci-fi, you know.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's like Big Mac. Yeah. It's kind of cool. I have no problem. It's unashamedly a blockbuster. I mean, it's kind of I suppose it's a prog mentality to not like anything that gets too popular. Prog is an underground genre, an underground sort of musical scene, and you know, the moment Steve Wilson gets really popular, everyone starts going, Steve Wilson's too popular now. we shall not like him anymore. But that's bollocks. I mean, Steve Wilson's popular because people like him, which is because he's good. You know, whether or not you don't like his latest thing, at least he's not making the same album that he made last time. You know, I personally like the musical adventure that is Steve Wilson, but he's a friend of mine, so I've known him a long time. So, you know, he's I think he's, you know, bravery of, you know, artistic bravery is to be applauded as far as I'm concerned. You know, films. And I much as it's I suppose from a social perspective, and it's probably politically incorrect to like it now, but I really like the film K-Pax, despite all the allegations against Kevin Spacey. I know that it's yet to go to court, but I do love K-Pax. I think that's a brilliantly made film. And
he's a great actor, so regardless of, yeah,
you can't take away from the fact that he's a great actor.
Exactly.
And also The Black Hole. I love that film. I mean, it's a Disney film, and yet you think about it now, how dark was that film? You know, you got a robot fucking spinning things going through some dude's books. That's a Disney film. Disney made Mickey Mouse. Think about that.
There is an Easter egg in the notes of Please Come Home at the end of the booklet. Oh, my God, it's full of stars. It's a clear reference
to the fact that Peter Cox and Nick Kershaw are on the album. Yeah, no, it's a reference to 2001, obviously. Oh, obviously 2001, and actually, I really like 2010 as well. I think that's a much maligned and underestimated film. I think it's a brilliant film, and yet it gets a lot of people give it a load of shit because it's got Roy Scheider in it.
Mm-hmm. And also, do you acknowledge Sir Clive Sinclair on the next two albums for Keeping the Dream Alive, who is well known for at least the home computer ZX Spectrum, which most of us grew up with.
Absolutely. Well, here's the thing, and it's not just these two albums, it's every album that I've ever made. There is a thank you to Sir Clive Sinclair. And that's quite simple. Every time I feel sad or down in the dumps or really depressed, and there's been plenty of those times, all I have to think about is the ZX Spectrum and me completing Manic Minor in 3 hours. When I think about that, I start smiling. And that's because of Clive Sinclair.
That's a very good antidote.
Yeah. It is. There's nothing that makes me happier than firing up a Spectrum emulator, or indeed the real thing, and playing Elite or Academy or SETI.
And the noise of the tape loading the programs.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man, that's like music to me. You know, I'm surprised I don't start loading something when I listen to that.
I haven't heard of Manic Minor since I played it, so thanks for the reminder.
Well, I suggest you do, and for me, right? When you get out, when we get off this call, go and download a ZX Spectrum emulator, fire up Manic Minor, and I want to know how far you get on your first 3 lives.
Okay, will do.
Okay, cool.
So we've done movies. Obviously, we're not going to go into the Dune versus Foundation debate because you're going to miss your prog talk if we start talking about that. But just wondering about other forms of art that are appealing to you, and what other influences or what other things you find inspiring throughout literature or throughout visual arts.
Right. I'm like I say, I'm a massive film fan. I'm a huge film fan. I can't honestly. I mean, I read a lot. I read a lot of books. I can't say I'm massively interested by the art world at large. I did when I was a kid. The first school I got into. I did an art scholarship because I was quite good at painting. But I'm a bit, when it comes to the world of art, I'm a bit old-fashioned, I'm afraid. I like pictures by Hogarth and Turner and just old English stuff. I'm not particularly, I'm not beyond that really. I'm a bit old-fashioned. Favorite books. I just like old books that, I think the book I've read the most more than anything, and this is really, I suppose, pitiful in a way. I think I've read Treasure Island about 37 times. I don't know why I've read it 37 times. You thought I'd have got the general message the first time. Guys, go and find treasure, fight over treasure, come home, the end. But then you could say the same about Lord of the Rings, couldn't you? 3 films about walking. That's it.
So, regarding visuals, especially in connection with the movie references and the whole space theme we talked about, I personally always felt that lonely robot albums lend themselves very well with the film adaptation. Your collaboration with Mike Scarin of Crystal Spotlight resulted in a stunning film for Under Stars. So we encourage you to do that again. And why not an entire trilogy as visuals for a live event, maybe?
Well, I tell you the thing about that, and I'll tell you how that came to be. It's funny because I've been asked about that a few times, and the reason I always want, because in progressive rock, or as a medium, or like in any kind of, like, anybody that's, I suppose, artistically inclined. I hate to say it, but, Peter Gabriel, every time he's made music, the accompanying visuals are always really strong. Now, obviously, I don't have Peter Gabriel's money or success, but I've always kind of kept in mind the fact that when you do release an album, I mean, there's a tendency in progressive rock to have, some fairly cliched, I don't need to, I'm not going to point the finger, but there are some fairly, standard. There's a lot of things that you find on progressive rock album covers, orbs, and a lot of it looks like, a lot of the time you see like Bryce 3D imagery, or like, remember Bryce 3D? Like a pyramid with an orb in front of it, or, and a lot of that to me is like, well, come on, guys, make a bit more effort, So whilst, I don't have vast amounts of money to make, cool album covers, I do remember I was like with The Big Dream, I really wanted to have this thing where, I actually remember everyone saying, oh, yeah, cool, you got in a bed and you CGI'd it onto the thing. No, man. I bought a bed on eBay, a little child's bed made of iron that looks like one of those Pink Floyd beds, and I carried it all the way up into some woods, and I made the bed in the woods in my pajamas, and I lay in it surrounded by people with animals' heads, and like people were walking past, ramblers with their dogs and stuff, and I'm going, oh, please get the photo, please take the picture, this is so embarrassing. But at the same time, I really believe that, you have to make, it does, the whole imagery of the music does matter. I mean, like you asked, I'm not massively, I don't spend time buying books on art or anything like that, but I do understand that, I like things to look fairly, I suppose, iconic or whatever, that's possibly the right word, but at least I think that the imagery, when it comes to music, has to at least sort of go some way to try and hold up its end of the bargain. So, I always wanted that to be the case with my music. When it came to do Under Stars, every time we released a Lonely Robot album, like the first album, nobody knew what Lonely Robot was. So I kind of did a little concert in the Lexington in London, and Heather came down and Kim came down and my friend Liam played keys, and it was a really good event. And Steve Hogarth was there, and all the guys, everybody that was on the album. It was a really nice night. The second time when we released The Big Dream, I did a big gig in Reading at Sub 89, which is a really good venue in Reading, and it was ram packed. It was a really good evening. And on the third time, I said, "What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" And Freddie at the label said, "Why don't we release it at a cinema?" I said, "Why are we going to do that?" And he goes, "Well, because cinemas always got really good sound systems. So we want to play this album to the fans and the press. We want to make sure it sounds good, right?" I said, "That's a brilliant idea. Let's do it in a cinema." And then I said to Freddie, "What are we going to do? What's going to be on the screen at the cinema?" And he goes, "Well, we'll just have a static image, maybe the album cover." And I thought, well, that's shit. We're not doing that. We need a film. So we made the film just so that when we launched the album, we would have like visuals to go alongside the whole of the album as it played through the speakers. And I said this to Miles, and Miles has always wanted to watch something that he's made in a cinema. So he really went absolutely bonkers. He spent so much time putting that together. He really wanted it to be right, and it was a labor of love for him. I don't think he was paid vast amounts of money. I think he was probably paid a couple of grand. But you know, I'm really pleased that we did it. And to be totally honest with you, I didn't have much input into it. I just gave him rough ideas here and there, you know. So yeah, I'm really glad that we did it, and I'm glad that we put it online as well, because obviously it got shown at 2 different cinemas twice. So, you know, only a couple of hundred people got to see it. And then I said, well, when lockdown started, let's put it online so that anybody that wants to watch it can watch it, you know. And it certainly beats me standing at home with an acoustic guitar doing this in front of my cooker. You know, I thought, yeah, let's put the film up instead. That's far more impressive.
You did the right thing, because last year when it was premiered with Space Rocks, I did write to them and I said, okay, when this is going to be available to the general public? And they said, oh, we don't know, but yeah, maybe at some time. And then just a couple of months ago, there it is. And it was like, wow, cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's got the, you know, that album, I suppose, you know, again, marketing, I suppose that had reached the end of its natural, you know, if the point of using the film was to launch the album, and then we had the 3 videos from the album, you know, and it was all, they were kind of visual accompaniments, you know, and like, I really like the one that Miles did for How Bright Is the Sun, you know, that was a really cool video. Just, it was brilliant. And I thought, it's a real shame, you know, we're on to the next album. Why not kind of just remind people about Lonely Robot by putting the film up just for everybody to watch for free? And it was a cool thing to do. And we had a little premiere, and I kind of answered some questions online. Yeah, really, I'm really pleased we did it though. I would like to do something like that again in the future, but of course it's, you know, it's got to be relevant to whatever, you know, and it's difficult making videos during lockdown as well. You know, you're very limited as to what you can do, because policemen in Reading don't like you wandering around with a camera, you know, filming on location. So, you know, it's been kind of hard putting visual stuff together for this album, but, you know, we've done the best we can.
But it's definitely something that can become a potential future revenue stream, maybe, because this might be something worth considering in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Visual aids.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Miles and I, we've had a very good, you know, collaborative process. The thing about it is, of course, Miles is now like the most popular video guy on the planet. So trying to get Miles time, it's like, you know, it's like trying to get a ticket to the moon. It's difficult these days. And of course, you know, he's doing stuff like Steve Wilson and Fish, and he's kind of, you know, he's the celebrity video guy now. And I'm lowly John Mitchell. I can't even get to see my buddy anymore. So yeah.
Well, lowly John Mitchell is a man of many talents, as we know. We're trying to keep track of all your projects, of all your roles that you have, be it a producer or a guitarist in a band, or maybe the creator of new projects or new bands or albums. But just wondering how you keep juggling all these things and all these roles and all these albums that keep being churned out.
Well, it's I don't have a job, so that kind of helps. There's 365 days in the year. I reckon it takes 5 or 6 weeks to make an album. So when you bear that in mind, you've still got another 9 months to do stuff. So when you think about it, it's not that hard. But you know, if I had a full-time job doing anything other than music, it might prove more difficult, but at the moment that's not the case. But you know, it's only a matter of time before I have to start doing landscape gardening, because no one's coming in my studio. I'll let you know when that happens.
But if you start collecting some gardening books, then you're gonna have interesting titles for the next album, probably.
I've already done that. I bought a load of books on gardening. I beat you to it.
So I have to ask, because I'm a big arena fan, especially in light of the recent news with Damien joining. How are things on the arena front, since we're talking bands and side projects and all those things?
Yeah, I mean, it's I say we were supposed to be going on tour in October, and you know, with Arena putting a tour together, and Arena tours are always quite long, relatively speaking. You know, in the wide world of prog, if anybody goes on tour, it's normally for about 4 or 5 gigs, isn't it? Or maybe a bit longer.
Yeah.
Longer.
Yeah.
But you know, at the level of the sort of band that Arena is, I mean, Marillion, when Marillion go on tour, it's like this long. And it's Mick Pointer's role in life is to make long tours. He likes making long tours. And he doesn't like days off. So the singers get very frustrated when they don't get a day off on an Arena tour. Because, of course, if you're a singer and you sing like Manzi, it's very difficult to sing day in, day out for a month, because it takes quite a lot of, takes quite a toll on the voice. I think we're all quite disappointed that the tour obviously isn't going to go ahead, and that was a lot of planning on Mick's part, putting the tour together in the first place.
Yep.
As regards to Paul Manzi, I think, you know, we've been with Paul for like 10 years. He kind of joined the suite, which in some way is my fault, because I recommended he join the suite. But you know, I think that I just don't think Paul's heart was in it anymore. I just don't think, you know, I think the way that I think Paul very much likes to know exactly how much money he's going to be earning every night, you know. And of course, with a band like Arena, it's kind of a profit sharing thing, and you don't know how much money you're going to earn during a tour. It's a speculative thing, and sometimes you do better than others. But you kind of go into that in the knowledge that that's the way it is. You know, it's like any band. You know, and you need to sell merchandise on tour to generate revenue. You know, it's just a difficult thing. And I think Paul is very much of the fact that he wants to know, right, I'm going to be doing a gig tonight, and tonight I am going to be earning £750 every day. You know, he's been a musician all of his adult life, and then he's got to a point where he just wants to have it as a job that he does, and a set fee, you know, and knows what he's going to be paying. Plus, I think the fact that, you know, his heart wasn't in Arena anymore, and so, you know, I think we've had a few meetings with him over the last 6 months where he said, yeah, he still didn't want to do it, but he wasn't sure. And then when before we even cancelled the tour, he said that he didn't want to do the tour because he didn't think that it would, you know, obviously if the tour was going to go ahead, the amount of audience numbers would probably be significantly diminished. You know, I just think perhaps he was looking for not an excuse to get out, but I think I think, you know, in his mind, I think he'd had enough of Arena and being in Arena, and that's fine. You know, life is transient, nothing is forever, and of course, I think, you know, we had some great times with Paul. You know, I had a lot of very good times with Paul, and you know, there's no hard feelings there at all. It's sad in a way because I like him, but there you go, onwards. And of course, Damien, and we'd always known Damien. Damien and Mick and Clive have known each other since the dawn of time, and there have been moments in the past with previous lead singers in Arena when those lead singers have been misbehaving, that myself, Mick and Clive have said, why don't we just get Damien in the band? Come on, let's ring up Damien. Let's see what Damien's doing. This is too much of a pain in the arse. Let's get Damien in the band. And of course, you know, whatever the problems were at the time, they worked themselves out. And then of course that singer would leave, and then another singer would come in, and etc., etc., etc. And of course, this time Damien's not in a band. Paul decided he wanted to leave. We spoke to Damien and he said yes. So there you go. It's taken pretty much the entire history of Arena. I mean, he's always been on the cards, you know, but it so happens this time he was free and available and he wanted to do it. And that's how we've come to that decision.
Got it.
So it's a planet alignment here.
Yes. We looked at the horoscope and it read right. Yeah. Yes, man. So yeah, that's kind of cool.
What were some of the albums that have impressed you in the last months, or what were some of your favorites since I guess that you have also had more time for listening to things in the past months, and especially, and this is something that is also one of our obsessions, where do you see our niche genre going? Where do you see the prog the much maligned often prog music evolving into?
Okay, well that's okay. Well, I'll start with your first question. If you're asking me what prog albums have I been listening to?
No, generally.
Generally speaking,
can be anything. Yeah.
The prog. I tell you what, I can answer that question. Well, in relation to prog albums that I like, the prog albums that I like by new bands are all the bands that we signed to our White Star label. The band I really like, Kepler 10, so we signed them. I really like Paradox Twin, so we signed them. And I really liked, and even though it's a dreadful name, Quantum Pig, and I said it's a fucking dreadful name, I'm only going to sign you if you change your name. And they said, no, we're not changing our name. I said, okay, fuck it. Right, Quantum Pig, those are the prog bands, the modern prog bands that I like, you know. And, you know, also, and Voices from the Fuselage. So if it's on our label, that's a prog band that I like. And Kairos, that's another prog band that I like. But so you know about that. That answers that question. But in terms of other music that I've been listening to that I really like, in recent times I've become somewhat obsessed with a band called The Midnight, who are a synthwave band. Now I don't know if you know about the synthwave movement. It's basically 80s electropop reimagined, but with a modern twist. So it's very keyboard based. And The Midnight are probably, in my opinion, probably the best band in the genre of synthwave, as it were. And I've been to see them live twice now. They're brilliant. It's a strange band in that they were two producers. Well, there was a singer-songwriter and a producer. The producer guy is from Denmark, and the singer-songwriter is from Nashville. And he doesn't actually know anything about the 80s or 80s music. He plays like country music, right? And they kind of met each other at some writing camp, right? And for some reason, and nobody knows why, they decided to start making 80s music. And thank goodness they did. I love their music. There's an album called Endless Summer, which I'm particularly obsessed with. A lot of people might think it's cheesy, but I think it's brilliant, and they're very popular. Another band I've been listening to a lot recently is a band from Denmark called Carpark North, who kind of play kind of angular sort of post-rock music. They veer between. They have a certain amount of electronica in their music, but they're quite. There's a song called Berlin, which is that's quite one of their older songs, but it's absolutely brilliant. It's got some odd time signatures, really odd, and the singer sounds very much like Morten from a-ha, and I absolutely, I think if there's one thing that I love in the world musically, it's kind of the bleakness of Scandinavian sounding bands. And there is something, you can't even put your finger on it. It's like when I say Scandinavian bands, well, John, what do you mean Scandinavian bands? Well, I tell you what I mean. Bands from Scandinavia who, for some reason, all have a real bleakness about them. They've got all their music's got lots of ninth intervals in it and seventh intervals.
Yeah.
You know, and it sounds, I just don't know. I love it. I absolutely love how miserable that stuff sounds. And Carpark North, there's something very beautiful but quite barren about the music that they make. So I love Carpark North. And what else? Crikey. I've been listening to the Moon soundtrack a lot. That's the Clint Mansell thing that I mentioned. I love that. And also, what's the Brian? I can't forget the name of the album. The Brian Eno album with Ascent and ending on it. Is it Apollo? The Atmosphere. Yeah, I think it's Brian. It's called Apollo. I think it's called the Brian Eno album, the Atmosphere album. It's very, very relaxing. Brilliant hammock music. Perfect music for a hammock.
If you were to maybe share some thoughts, send a message to the Romanian fans or followers.
Right. Okay. Okay. I'm going to quote the film Spinal Tap here because I'm English and it's funny. So the message I'd like to send the fans in Romania: have a good time all of the time.
That is awesome. And if I am allowed to maybe come up with a closing line,
Yeah.
you might recognize maybe the source of it.
Okay.
Come back Lonely Robot. Your music is beautiful. It has a lot to give.
Oh, thank you very much.
And we have to thank you for the very entertaining, very open and informative discussion we had. And we hope to have you again with us, John.
That would be my pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank
Was
you so
very
much
nice
for taking
to meet
the time.
You too, guys. Lovely to speak to you.